My partner, Will, and I have shared nearly 2 years together, and for a while, it felt like we were sailing through the honeymoon phase with ease. But life has a way of throwing unexpected curveballs, and our blissful bubble was shattered when Will was involved in a horrific accident. The news came to me in fragments, delivered through tears over the phone by his devastated mother. It was late at night, and Will had been traveling home on a train when tragedy struck. He fell onto the tracks, and there were no witnesses to the accident. The security cameras, inexplicably, were not functioning that day. All that remained were fragments of his shattered body strewn across the tracks. The loss was devastating, and I struggled to come to terms with the gaping void his absence left in my life. But just when I thought I was beginning to cope with the pain, I received a chilling phone call in the dead of night. Answering the phone in a haze of sleepiness, I was met with heavy breathing on the other end of the line. A voice, unfamiliar and haunting, asked if I had made it home. The call ended abruptly, leaving me shaken to my core. It was Will's number, but he was gone. How was he reaching out to me from beyond the grave? The eerie calls continued, interspersed with cryptic text messages that left me feeling increasingly unsettled. It felt like I was being haunted by a ghost, by Will himself. The situation took a terrifying turn when I encountered him on a train ride home one evening. His presence was unmistakable, but his demeanor was chillingly vacant, devoid of the warmth and familiarity I once knew. His eyes met mine, but there was no recognition, no trace of the love we once shared. The encounter left me reeling, questioning my sanity and the boundaries between reality and illusion. Was Will truly reaching out to me from beyond the grave? Or was it all a figment of my imagination? In a desperate bid to find closure, I returned to the train station, hoping to confront whatever spectral presence had been tormenting me. And there, in the dead of night, I came face to face with Will once more. But this time, the illusion shattered, revealing the gruesome truth of his demise. His once perfect appearance was marred by death, his features twisted and grotesque. And in a horrifying twist, it was he who pushed me onto the tracks, sealing my fate with the oncoming train. In my final moments, as the world blurred into darkness around me, I realized the chilling truth. I had been alone all along. The phone calls, the encounters, they were all figments of my fractured mind, manifestations of grief and guilt. As I bid farewell to the world, I hope my story serves as a cautionary tale, a reminder that sometimes the monsters we fear are the ones lurking within ourselves. And as for Will, wherever he may be, I pray he finds peace in the afterlife.
On a frigid February 14th, a date typically adorned with symbols of love and affection, my family and I found ourselves gathered for an unexpected and somber occasion, my mother's funeral. Her passing had come as a shock, her peaceful departure occurring in the stillness of her sleep. Left behind were my older sister and me, her estranged children, with whom she had maintained a distant and strained relationship. Despite the lack of emotional closeness, societal expectations demanded a facade of grief as we navigated through the rituals of mourning. Standing beside my mother's casket, surrounded by a sea of mourners, I couldn't help but feel a sense of detachment from the solemn proceedings. While tears flowed freely from the eyes of others, my own were merely a facade, masking the indifference I felt towards her passing. It was a surreal experience, observing the scene unfold before me, knowing that this would likely be the last time I would ever gaze upon her earthly form. Amidst my contemplations, a hand extended towards me, offering a tissue. Looking up, I was met with the piercing gaze of a man, the most strikingly handsome individual I had ever encountered. Despite the somber ambience of the occasion, his presence was magnetic, drawing me in with an allure that was impossible to resist. We engaged in conversation, the words flowing effortlessly between us, momentarily dispelling the heaviness that hung in the air. As the hours passed and our conversation deepened, I found myself captivated by his charm and charisma. It was as if time stood still as we shared stories and exchanged laughter amidst the grief-stricken crowd. Yet, as the evening wore on, I reluctantly excused myself to freshen up in the restroom, secretly hoping that he would still be there upon my return. Upon emerging from the restroom, however, he was nowhere to be found, leaving behind a sense of longing and disappointment. Determined to reconnect with him, I scoured social media platforms in search of any trace of his identity, but my efforts proved futile. Faced with the realization that I may never see him again, I began to concoct a daring plan, one that would reunite us under the most improbable circumstances. Days later, as we gathered once more for my sister's funeral, the atmosphere was heavy with grief and sorrow. Yet, amidst the sea of mourners, there he was, the enigmatic stranger from my mother's funeral. His presence brought a glimmer of hope amidst the darkness, and I seized the opportunity to exchange numbers with him, ensuring that our paths would cross again. Alone once more in the cemetery, I found myself reflecting on the events that had transpired, grappling with the moral implications of my actions. But in the end, all I could do was smile, knowing that my unconventional decision had brought me one step closer to the handsome stranger who had captivated my heart amidst the grief and sorrow of loss. As I gazed out over the rows of tombstones, I couldn't help but feel a sense of optimism for the future, knowing that even in the midst of death, love had found a way to flourish.
Last year, on Valentine's Day, an unsettling series of events unfolded that left me feeling uneasy and vulnerable in my own home. As a single woman residing in a small house just outside a bustling city, I had grown accustomed to the tranquility of my surroundings. However, on that fateful morning, a peculiar discovery shattered the peacefulness I had come to cherish. Awakening at my usual hour of 6 a.m., I stepped outside my front door to find an unexpected surprise awaiting me, a letter adorned with a single rose. Intrigued yet slightly unnerved, I retrieved the letter, noting with curiosity that it bore my name but lacked any indication of its sender. The timing and personal touch of the gesture left me unsettled, as it seemed unlikely that such a token of affection could have been delivered anonymously. Upon reading the letter, my initial sense of intrigue quickly turned to apprehension. Its contents, though complimentary in nature, bordered on invasive detailing aspects of my daily life and suggesting an inexplicable connection between the sender and myself. Despite my efforts to dismiss it as a harmless prank, the absence of a return address or any identifying information left me feeling vulnerable and exposed. Seeking reassurance, I reached out to friends, sharing the letter's contents and seeking their insights. While they found humor in the situation, none claimed responsibility for the mysterious correspondence, deepening the sense of uncertainty that gnawed at me. As the day progressed, I pushed the encounter to the back of my mind, focusing instead on the demands of my work. Yet, upon returning home that evening, my unease resurfaced as I discovered yet another enigmatic message awaiting me on my doorstep. Its simple yet unsettling question, "Why don't you spend Valentine's Day with me?" sent shivers down my spine, igniting a sense of dread that lingered long after I had retreated indoors. Seeking solace in the company of my best friend, I recounted the day's events, finding temporary comfort in her presence. Yet, as night fell and I found myself alone once more, a sense of unease settled over me, amplified by the ominous sound of a knock at my front door. Hastening to investigate, I found no trace of the mysterious visitor, their presence fleeting yet palpable in the stillness of the night. Though I attempted to rationalize the incidents as harmless pranks, a sense of foreboding lingered, prompting me to seek refuge in the familiarity of my friend's company. As the days passed without further incident, I allowed myself to believe that the ordeal was behind me, dismissing it as a bizarre yet ultimately harmless occurrence. Yet, just when I thought the ordeal had come to an end, a final letter appeared at my doorstep, its contents veering from unsettling to downright threatening. The chilling words, "I've been watching you," sent a chill down my spine, confirming my worst fears and prompting me to seek assistance from the authorities. Though the investigation yielded no conclusive results, the presence of a police officer stationed outside my home provided a semblance of security in the wake of the ordeal, while the identity of my tormentor remains a mystery to this day. The experience serves as a sobering reminder of the fragility of security and the importance of vigilance in an unpredictable world.
Last year, just a few days before Valentine's Day, I found myself in a situation that I never could have imagined. At 18 years old, I was a shy guy, navigating the complexities of teenage life and longing for a connection with someone special. Despite my efforts, it seemed like every girl I encountered either ignored me or showed no interest in getting to know me. One evening, I was out at a restaurant with my best friend, John. As we chatted about various topics, including sports, I confided in him about my struggles with dating. John, who was in a relationship at the time, offered to help me by recommending a dating app he had used successfully. Intrigued by the idea, I eagerly followed John's advice and set up a profile on the app later that night. Choosing the best photo of myself and carefully crafting my bio, I anxiously awaited any potential matches. To my surprise, within minutes, I received a notification indicating that I had matched with someone named Eva. Excited by the prospect of finally connecting with someone, I initiated a conversation with Eva, who responded warmly. As we exchanged messages, she seemed genuine and kind, sparking a glimmer of hope within me. Encouraged by our interaction, I mustered the courage to ask Eva if we could meet in person. To my delight, she agreed and provided me with her address, inviting me to visit her that very night. Filled with anticipation, I prepared myself and set out to meet her, eager to see where this newfound connection might lead. However, as I navigated the unfamiliar streets to Ava's house, a sense of unease began to creep over me. The road grew increasingly desolate, with sparse streetlights casting eerie shadows in the darkness. Despite my growing apprehension, I pressed on, determined to meet Eva. Finally arriving at the address she had provided, I found myself standing before a dilapidated house, its decrepit facade casting a foreboding shadow over the scene. Ignoring the ominous feeling in the pit of my stomach, I ventured inside, calling out for Eva. To my dismay, there was no sign of her, only the unsettling sight of a blue dress and wig hanging from the ceiling. Confused and unnerved, I called out once more, only to be met with a chilling response from a mysterious figure lurking in the shadows. Turning to face him, I was met with a sinister grin and the glint of a gun in his hand. Paralyzed with fear, I complied with his demands, handing over my belongings as he disappeared into the night, leaving me shaken and vulnerable. Fleeing the scene, I raced back to safety, where I confided in John about the terrifying encounter. Together, we contacted the authorities, who launched an investigation into the incident. However, despite their efforts, the perpetrator remained at large, leaving me grappling with the trauma of the ordeal. In the aftermath of that harrowing experience, I made the decision to delete the dating app and steer clear of online dating altogether. While the scars of that night may never fully heal, I am grateful for the lessons learned and the importance of staying vigilant in an increasingly unpredictable world.